Good morning. It is Monday, the 16th of October. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. Technical difficulties on a Monday morning. Who could imagine that, Kristen Boice? But we are here for another edition of Mental Health Monday. We welcome you to the show this morning. I can tell you what, this conversation is needed this morning. And I'm so glad to have my good friend, Kristen Boice, the owner of Pathways to Healing, with us yet again here this morning on a Monday morning. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jenson. I'm glad to be here with you today.
So glad to have you with us. There's a lot going on in our world. I can tell you, even internationally, there's a lot going on. Locally, boy, there's a lot going on. There's some folks that are working through some things. I'm so excited. I know we have a lot of new first timers here this morning, which is awesome. Hopefully maybe this is just a chance to tune in, grab some tools, listen to some good strategy on how to manage some of the things that you're dealing with every day. If you have any questions throughout the show this morning, specifically as it relates to mental health issues or really anything for that matter, feel free to type in the chat. If we can't get to it during the live show, we'll get you some responses later today as well. We're here as a support system for you to work through some of our fears, some of our anxieties going on. And I know there's a lot of that out there. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show here this morning. But before we get started, Kristen, as always, let's get started with one of my favorite exercises with some square breathing. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor Jenson. The first strategy I teach every single client is some deep breathing. And right now, when things are heightened, you might feel some more activation in your nervous system. You might feel more triggered. This is a perfect way to start. Now, it's not the end all be all. It's the first step in starting to regulate your nervous system. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to put our feet on the floor. We're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to try to hold for 4 and then exhale, dropping your shoulders down, releasing on that out breath for 8. So let's do 2 breaths together. So feet on the floor, kind of sit up in your chair, feeling yourself in your chair. If you're standing, just feeling yourself standing, grounding and centering ourselves into the here and now in this present moment. So pressing into your feet, inhale through your nose and release. And you're going to want to let all that tension, all that tightness that you might be experiencing right now, you're going to release that on the exhale. Let's do one more together, pressing into our feet. Nice, big, deep inhale. And exhale. You're just going to notice the difference between when you started and now. I recommend doing 5 to 6 breaths every hour, especially when you're feeling more anxious, you're feeling more activated, you're feeling more triggered. It's an important step to get yourself back to center, back to calm, back to regulated. And that's something we want our children to also learn how to do. And if we're not doing it, they don't learn how to regulate themselves. It's an important strategy for us to all embrace, especially right now when there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I talk about square breathing a lot, Kristen. I do it every day in my office, in the car, at home. And I want to hit on a point that you made. Kids, especially as they get, I have a whole range of children at home, but the older ones especially can really start to understand this. And we try to work through during temper tantrums, working on our breathing, regulating that breathing, and kids can really pick up on it. And so I would encourage you, if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, if you're a guardian, whatever role you play, during those heightened moments of tenseness with your children, square breathing is a great way to help them work through it. So I can't say enough about it. So again, we welcome you this morning. We know there's a lot of first-time viewers this morning. That's awesome. If you have any questions, want to say hi, whatever you want to do, feel free to type that in the chat. Like I said, we're here to be a resource. Hopefully you can just even put this on in the background and listen and learn a little bit here as we go along. So I want to dive in on a topic of uncertainty. And I know there are a lot of folks. I'm not immune to social media, Kristen. I know you're on there as well. You've seen some chats about what's going on in our daily lives, whether it be at work, at home, at school. I know there's some changes there for folks. Not only are we back in school for a new school year, that brings some heightened sense of anxiety. Anyways, I have a kindergartner. We worked through that a little bit. But also then when things change, when things are going one way for a few weeks here in Noblesville or a few days in other school systems and policies change, that uncertainty can bring about a whole host of emotions. So let's start with uncertainty. I want to cover anxiety. I want to cover fear as well. I also want to talk a little bit about modeling behavior as a parent, because I think that's been important as well. But let's start with uncertainty and how we manage that uncertainty.
Okay, first of all, let's acknowledge, I'm all about acknowledgement. Let's acknowledge that everyone is so tired and sick of COVID. And what are we doing each day? And then our expectations around how is tomorrow going to go? How is today going to go? We kind of get a sense of what that looks like. And then when we have to shift and pivot, that can trigger some emotions. And how do we manage those emotions? Because what is underneath uncertainty, what is underneath anxiety is fear. Typically it's fear. And if we peel back the layer, we peel back the onion, we ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? Well, of course we all have fear. We just don't want to acknowledge it. We all have it. It can be healthy. It can help keep us safe. It can also be maladaptive when perhaps we're running on the fear of something bad happening because we haven't processed perhaps something happening in our own lives that was scary. It can be from our own childhood. It can be from a trauma. And what I'm seeing right now underneath the triggers is a lot of probably unprocessed emotions around maybe control. Maybe you felt controlled in your childhood. Maybe you felt controlled during a traumatic situation. Maybe you felt powerless. Often as children, we do feel powerless. And if we haven't worked through some of those touchstone moments, some of that trauma that has really impacted us, we haven't been able to grieve it. We didn't feel like we had a voice. We didn't feel heard. We didn't feel cared for. We didn't feel listened to. That can start activating us when certain situations arise, and we can displace perhaps some of that earlier trauma onto a situation or something else. And so it's really important that we're all checking our own energy, checking my own reactivity, and noticing what is going on inside of me that I feel my nervous system heightened. I feel my body responding to a certain whatever's going on in the environment. And I always ask myself, this is the number one question. It's not, and it may sound funny. And I realize this may be triggering for some in terms of what we're talking about, but I ask myself, and I have clients ask themselves, how old do I feel? You're like, what? What kind of question is that? Because oftentimes, if I'm highly triggered or activated, I'm functioning from a younger age. I'm functioning from something that happened in the past. So for example, my daughter's learning to drive. Okay, so we're in the car and we're at the very basic of learning to drive. There's uncertainty, there's fear. I've been in 5 car accidents, mainly with family members, not in my current life. This is growing up. And so I have a lot of anxiety in the car, and I have to own that. I have to take responsibility for my own nervous system and my own reactivity. So I'm doing breathing like you wouldn't believe. I'm like, okay, and I'm lowering my voice, and I also have to work through that. So I don't project my reaction, my high intensity onto my kid and then have her get nervous and anxious in the car. So I'm doing the breathing, and then Mark and I, my husband, will say, okay, when we're in the passenger seat and she's driving, we'll say, okay, take a deep breath. And that's for me too. I'm not telling her, I'm doing the breathing because I need to do the breathing because I need to self-soothe. I need to self-regulate. So I'm giving you a real life example of when I might feel triggered. That's my responsibility to check my energy and tend to what's causing me to feel so triggered. And it's okay for me to feel fear, but I'm responsible for managing it. So do I displace this onto my daughter? Do I yell at the driver ahead of us? Do I scream at my other kid in the car? Or do I take a moment, take my deep breaths? I'm making this sound super easy. It's not. I'm taking my deep breath. I'm working really hard to notice my own anxiety, my own fear. And I have to own that so I don't perpetuate anxiety and tag her with my anxiety. And it can happen, right? I can still get triggered. I can still be like, stop, 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 stop. And then all of a sudden I'm at a 10 because we're not stopping. And then I have to come back to center and regroup. So here's my strategies. One is acknowledge when you are in fear. Acknowledge, hey, we're tired. We've got a lot of fatigue over what's been going on in the world for so long. There's been so much trauma around this. There's been so much divisiveness. I have seen it. I've walked people through it. I have walked people through losses. I've walked through people feeling all kinds of traumas that have come up as a result of this. Let's have some compassion for ourselves and maybe our own response to this, because it's been hard. The second thing is you got to take responsibility for your own reactivity. I can't tell you that enough. We all want to be heard, we want to be understood, and we want to be seen. Sometimes how we go about it that will not be the end result, because we're perpetuating a heightened sense of fear in other people based on our intensity. So when I self-soothe and I calm, I'm teaching my family to do the same thing. Such important hard work, and I'm practicing it right along with you. The next thing I want to say is boundaries. So having hard conversations over the internet is definitely what I don't recommend doing. We have taken the internet and we've decided we're going to react quickly to someone else's comments before we've self-regulated and self-soothed. And I'm recommending, like, get off the internet, get off the social media. Don't be watching the news. Like, watch what you're consuming. What kind of shows are you consuming? Is that heightening your fear of anxiety? Are you watching a lot of crime shows? I have a lot of clients that love crime shows. I used to love Dateline. I've given it up because I noticed my nervous system wasn't responding well. And if I have a highly traumatized client and they're consuming a lot of social media, they're consuming a lot of these crime shows, they're staying in fight, flight, or freeze. So a boundary for yourself might be like, oh, I'm not going to get on social media. I'm not going to get in those chats on Facebook, or I'm going to stay away from whatever that looks like for you, Twitter. So you can stay in a regulated state for your family and for yourself. More importantly, it feels awful to be highly activated and triggered. And the last thing I want to say that I think is so important is to notice your defensiveness. So we get into this right, wrong, good, bad, all, nothing, and that is survival states. And when we get into right and wrong, we lose our compassion. We lose our sense of empathy, and we lose our sense of understanding. It doesn't mean you're going to agree. Guess what? Chances are you're not. And at the same time, I am trying to self-soothe so I stay regulated, so I can have some compassion, not only for myself. I'm not going to be able to have compassion if I don't have compassion for myself, for other people. And we're not going to be able to be fully present with our children if I'm highly activated. For example, in the car, if I'm not doing my own work, I'm not going to be a good person for my daughter to drive with. And so I might even have to be self-aware enough to say, hey, you know what, for right now, until I work on this, I'm going to have to put a pause on driving with you, because I don't want that to be her carrying that sense of anxiety because I haven't worked through my own anxiety. So a boundary might be, okay, I might have to wait or pause. And you don't have to give a response to someone right away. That's the thing. We don't need to do that. We can say, you know what, I'm going to need to calm myself down. Once I'm calm, I'm happy to re-engage in the conversation. Or you might say, you know what, right now, I'm not able to engage in this conversation. It's too activating for me. It's too triggering. And so we're going to have to put a pin in that, because I'd rather keep connection rather than disconnection. And our defenses might be anger. Our defenses might be I might be in a righteous state, right, wrong state. A defense might be shaming someone else, blaming someone else. It might be displacing my anger. We see this in airports a lot, right? The weather goes bad, the aircraft can't go, and people are yelling at the gate, I don't even know what they're called, but the gate attendant, and they're powerless over it. Like they can't change the weather. So we're displacing what, and there might be other stuff going on for us. Someone, we might need to get home for a sick loved one. But if we can name that and say, hey, I've got a loved one home sick. I am really sad right now and scared. And I come from that place with an I feel, chances are we're human to human now. I'm not in a righteous one-up position or the other person is in one down position. And even though we may not agree, I want to make sure that's super clear. I know we're not all going to agree. And this is painful because as children, we wanted so much to be heard and tended to in our opinions to be heard. And when they're not, we can go into a defense response and we can do what was done to us, which is shame, belittle, get super angry and dysregulated. And we don't want to repeat that pattern. So take a deep breath. You can use an I feel statement with I feel sad and scared. I feel angry. Those are healthy and appropriate. And watching our tone of voice and our body language. These are strategies that I teach because uncertainty is here to stay. I hate saying that, but we're here to stay with uncertainty. How are you going to regulate through it? First, we have to breathe through that uncertainty and acknowledge the reality is it is uncertain. We can't predict. Oh, I love that if we could, because we're all sick of it. I mean, we're all tired of this. I get it. We all are. And when we can go, yeah, I'm sick of it too. I mean, we're all sick of it. There's something to be said about that. And then I feel scared or I feel sad because I lost a loved one, or I feel scared because I've got a immunocompromised, whatever that looks like. We start having different conversations rather than coming at it with defense, which is rage, anger, those that you're going to get the results you don't want, which is you're not going to get heard. It doesn't mean someone's going to really understand you. They're just going to kind of defend themselves back. So it's going to be defense, 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 because we've already flipped our lids. This is my little brain, right? Dr. Dan Siegel come up with, this is a regulated brain. This is a triggered brain where we flip our lid. And what I'm seeing is someone flips back. No one's regulated, even though they might feel regulated. Yes, go ahead.
No, that's helpful. You kind of had touched on it a little bit, and it's something that, I'm obviously a parent of small kids, and I realize my small kids are becoming older kids who watch what I do. And I'm sure there's been many people watching that are guilty of a child doing something and me questioning, why would you do that? And you get the response, well, Dad, you've done it. I'm like, oh, shoot. You had that moment. So can we talk a little bit about modeling behavior? I've seen that's been a hot topic in our house a little bit the last couple of days with some things going on and talking about modeling our behavior as parents, as grandparents, as just members of society. Talk a little bit about what that is like and maybe how that is impressionable on the next generation, if you will. Because a lot of this fear and anxiety obviously revolves around some school issues right now and some workplace issues. So I wonder if you could touch a little bit on modeling behavior, what that looks like, how to maybe go about doing that, and then how that is impressionable on the next generation.
Yeah, here's the first thing I want to say is the parents have the most important job for taking responsibility of what they're modeling for their children, and they're the most impressionable. So you will make the biggest difference in your children's lives based on what you do as a parent. I know it's big. I get it. And I mess up all the time. So let me paint a picture of I mess up all the time and I take responsibility. So one of the biggest pieces is self-regulated brain. So are you functioning from a very highly fight, flight, or freeze place? If so, I recommend 1, you get therapy, 2, journaling, movement. The breath is a huge piece of the work, and doing maybe some of this work that you might have put it away for a long time, hoping you never have to deal with it again. And seeing, oh, this is impacting not only me and how I feel, but also my children. So 1 is a regulated parent and a present parent is the most important part of parenting. Are you attuned? Are you so wrapped up in your own fear, in your own anxiety, in your own reactivity around something that you're losing attuning to your child. How does your child feel? And why do they feel that way? Is that because of what you've said? Is that because of what someone else has said? Is that because they've been influenced by social media or what they've read? Where is that coming from? And without judgment, without this one up, one down position, you having keen curiosity for your child's own emotions rather than you putting on what you feel onto the child. And then the child starts kind of mimicking what you're doing or what you're saying. So if you're very dysregulated and you're highly reactive and you're very triggered, that's going to affect your child's nervous system. So they're going to feel more, you can see my body, they're going to feel more anxious. They're going to feel more scared. They might even go to defenses that they've seen you do. So if one of your defenses is to be in the pantry eating a bag of potato chips, they might go, oh, food. Or maybe they've seen rage and anger coming from you. Maybe they've seen shutdown and avoidance. Maybe they've seen numbing behaviors, drinking, something like that. And this isn't to shame anybody because we all have them. So I want to make sure I'm being super clear. I have them, we all have them. And I have to own what is going on inside of me as a parent and what am I modeling for my children? What are the children picking up on behaviorally, emotionally, and in terms of defenses? How am I learning to deal with my emotions in a healthy way? Super important, something we weren't taught. This isn't to blame generations. We just know so much more now about the nervous system and how anxiety is highly contagious. It's the most, shame and anxiety are the most contagious things we can give our children. So if I'm super anxious and I look like I'm not, and I look like I'm just managing it well, maybe I clean a lot, maybe I like to be in control, maybe I'm busy all the time, maybe I like to just manage everything and have the house just look so. That's because I'm anxious underneath that. Maybe I have to be right because that makes me feel secure. And so we have to acknowledge our own internal state. And a lot of times we disconnect from that. We don't want to connect to our body, but our body gives us a lot of information. So our role as parents and what we're modeling. So if they see me yell and scream at the flight attendant or the gate person at the gate, they don't see a regulated parent. They see, oh, this is what we do when we feel anxious, when we feel mad, when we feel afraid, when we feel upset about anything, instead of using an I feel statement. I know it sounds so like, really, Kristen? I'm like, I know. And it's the most effective way to break generational patterns and to free yourself from that feeling of it not feeling empowered. It's the most empowering thing you can do is to take responsibility for your own reactivity and calmly and in a centered way, in a grounded way, approach that fear and that uncertainty that's really underneath. And it's to acknowledge it instead of bypass it with all our defense mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. So that's incredibly helpful. And I just asked that really, again, selfishly as a parent, because it's something that we're working through at our house, making sure that we are not passing on our anxieties or our fears or whatever it may be to the next gen, to our kids, but also then being able to verbalize our fears and anxiety. That's not, I'm not saying we should harbor them inside of us in order to protect our kids from them, but how do we manage that within the house in order to not shed fear or anxiety or concern onto our kids, which I think is really, really important. Can we hone in a little bit? You talked about those people who are quick responders, and we have a lot of that. Social media has really bred that a lot. You know, when you hear something, you want to react, whether it be going and posting, whether it be going and emailing, whether it be pick up the phone and calling, and you know. But if you're somebody who maybe is a known, you know that about yourself. You know you're a quick responder, or you know your spouse or your friend or whoever it may be is a quick responder. Can we walk through maybe some ideas on how to regulate ourselves in that moment? Maybe some things in my back pocket that I know that, hey, this is going to trigger me before I even pick up the phone, before I march down the hallway, before whatever I do. Walk me through maybe some exercises that I can work on.
Okay, first of all, everybody's going to go through this because there'll be somebody or something in your life that will cause you to feel heightened anger, maybe heightened fear, maybe disgust. The first thing is I'm going to return you to the breath. So the first thing is to breathe and to give yourself some permission to not respond. right away. Like we always think, I got to text, I got to respond. I don't want them to think I'm being non-responsive. No, my biggest thing is pause. And you can even put a pin in it for a day or two and write out maybe something you would want to say with an I feel statement. Okay, we've worked a lot on this on the show. I feel, and here's your cheat sheet. Okay, these are the core emotions: anger, fear. I'd invite you to really look at these two: fear and sadness and grief. We have a lot of feeling, and our kids are feeling sad over what was before COVID and now what is. And that makes sense. And especially teachers and administrators and children and parents, we all feel it. And it's okay. What are we doing with those feelings? Are we offloading them onto somebody else? Are we processing them? Are we acknowledging them? I feel with a core emotion in there. And so I will write out in my phone or write it out on paper, my response. I'm going to sit on it. I'm going to kind of pray over. I'm going to sit with it, be with it before I send it. And I may not opt to send anything. I may think, oh, I better not. I need to own my own stuff. So someone that's they're very like, they process pretty quickly and they want to fire something off. I'm going to invite all of us to take a deep breath and give yourself permission to pause. Don't do it. Just don't do it. Let it go. And don't even go back. My new motto is bless and release. Like bless and release. Have a little mantra: bless and release. Wish somebody well. Have some empathy. Have some understanding. It doesn't mean you agree with them. Bless and release. And so we don't give ourselves that permission. We think we have to do or respond in a certain way. If you're going to come at it with, I'm going to come at you, don't do it. Just don't respond. I'm telling you now, it's not worth it. It's going to cause disconnection rather than connection. And sometimes we have to say, let's put a pin in that. And right now I'm not able to engage in that. It's too triggering for me.
Bless and release. I love that. Full disclosure, Kristen, I've come a long way. And anytime you're in politics, you get hit with several things at times. I used to be a quick reactionary person. I can't tell you how many times I woke up the next morning or a couple hours later was like, oh, why did I kind of wish I wouldn't have sent that email or used that term or whatever. And actually met a mentor of mine who told me one time his statement was, you know what, when somebody approaches him about an idea about something you're doing wrong and just say, you know what, you might be right. You may be right. Thanks for sharing with me. As a way of like, yeah, you may be right. You may be wrong. You may be right. I don't know. You may be right. And move on. And so I like that, having an internal, your phrase that you can, bless and release. I love that. I love that. I love that. So let's work on blessing and releasing a little bit in the next couple of days too. So Kristen, our time is wrapping up here. Thank you once again. Quickly, we always end it. If you're in crisis right now, if you're struggling in your home or at work, or wherever you are, where can folks turn to for help right now?
Okay, first of all, I want everybody to know that's listening right now on the replay or live that you matter. You're important. I know this sounds cheesy, but you're loved. I'm all about it, and you're enough. So here's the number one resource I know it's gotten utilized a lot is the suicide hotline, 1-800-273-TALK. If you know anybody struggling, you can pick up the phone with that person there and call 1-800-273-TALK. And they will help you. They will walk you through how to help another person. So 1-800-273-TALK. You can also text if you don't want to, you don't want to talk on the phone. 741-741. Just put connect in the text message, and someone will be there. Prevail here locally. If you're going through any domestic abuse, emotional abuse, they have a 24-hour hotline. 317-776-3472. Then also we have the local emergency rooms that are also available at Community North and St. Vincent Stress Center. I just want everybody to know there is support out there for you. There's also a page on the City of Noblesville website, I believe, with a ton more resources. So don't hesitate to use that as well.
Awesome. Well, again, great resources. We're going to continue this conversation because, again, I think you said uncertainty is kind of here to stay with us in this era that we're in right now. But that's okay. That's what we're here to help you work through it. We're going to talk it out. We're going to talk it out to get it out, write it out to get it out. Bless and what'd you say?
Bless and release.
Bless and release. I love it. I'm going to do a lot of blessing and releasing today, folks. So thank you, Kristen Boice. You're awesome. Join us back here in 2 weeks and we'll continue the conversation.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.